The men's UFC flyweight division. A division that's been through a lot, Dom. It's been through a lot. Started around 2012, 2013. Demetrious Johnson, your inaugural champion, held the title for a long-ass time. Holds the record for most consecutive title defenses.
Mm-hmm.
Never was quite able to become a draw. He just never could really click with the fans like that. So you had a lot of years where the flyweight title was sort of relegated to a lot of fight nights, or a couple times at main evented shows, but it would be very lackluster buy rates and usually more in like a co-main spot, whatever. Then Demetrious loses a very close decision to Henry Cejudo.
Mm-hmm.
Mighty Mouse traded to ONE FC for Ben Askren. We talked about that in the last verbal sparring.
Yes.
So then you get the Henry Cejudo stuff, where then the ESPN deal kicks in. There's rumors that the flyweight division is going to be scrapped, gotten rid of. Henry Cejudo knocks out TJ Dillashaw and saves the flyweights.
Yep.
And then he goes to bantamweight. And that's all led to this little era we're in, where Deiveson Figueiredo and Brandon Moreno are now confirmed. They are scheduled for their 4th fight in January. So we have seen a trilogy already, but it was so good that people said we need a 4th.
A saga.
So my question is, Dom, is Figgy and Moreno series of fights the best thing to ever happen to this flyweight division?
Wow. That's a big question. Like dropping it on the table.
That's a tough. I mean, everything I just said, you could make an argument for each portion of that, in my opinion.
Oh, man.
If you wanted Demetrious's dominance, you can make an argument for. I mean, he really elevated that division. He got it off the ground, right? He was a long-standing champion. He's looked as one of the best fighters ever.
Yeah.
But I think Henry Cejudo's era could get a lot of credit because he kind of saved the division in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
With his performance against TJ and the way the King of Cringe and stuff. I mean, it kind of worked in a weird way. Like, it worked at annoying people. And then now you have these fights with Deiveson and Figgy that feel like we're just in a great time for this division. It's tough, but I do think you can make an argument for any of that.
I think I'm going to go no. I think I am going to go with Henry Cejudo's victory and defense of that title against TJ Dillashaw. And I say that because he got rid of the belt after he defended against TJ, right? But then that opened the door for probably the most competitive portion of flyweights we've ever seen. That's when Deiveson was really surging. Mm-hmm. He looked unbeatable. He had the scary looking wins over Deiveson Figueiredo. He dismantled Alex Perez. And then out of nowhere, Brandon Moreno surges back up, cut from the company, but comes in for a title fight. They have an incredible first fight. So I feel like that whole gap there, that 2019 to 2020, that's that period. And it was spearheaded by Henry Cejudo's victory over Demetrious and defense over TJ. So I'm going to go with that, but I'll just say it right here. Figueiredo and Moreno, 4th fight coming in January. Like Noah said, these two were put on this earth for a lot of things, but to fight one another. And it is quite amazing. So if anybody says yes to this question, I wouldn't hate on it for a second.
It's kind of interesting. You're using like a cause and effect. Like, you're picking the Cejudo era, if you want to call it that, because it sort of caused what we got now.
Right.
The snowball effect, right?
Yeah.
I think I am going to go with this series of fights, and I think that's because, and maybe this is a bit of wishful thinking, maybe I'm lying to myself when I say this, but Dominic, I think we're close to seeing legitimate main events with flyweights, and I hope this saga of fights have set that trend.
Yeah.
First fight was a main event. 1 month notice for both guys. They had fought on the previous month's main event, also headlining flyweight title, Deiveson, that is, against Perez.
What a period that was in itself.
Then the rematch, co-main under Izzy Vittori, pretty one-sided beatdown for Moreno.
Yeah.
Third fight, co-main under Ngannou Gane, was the best fight of the entire card.
Yes.
So much so they wanted a fourth fight. Don't know if this will be the main event of UFC Rio, but I wouldn't be upset if it was, because I think the UFC, I agree to an extent that Cejudo saved that division. I mean, I do think that night, him winning I think the UFC, if TJ Dillashaw won that fight, I think they were scrapping it.
Yeah.
But I also think there's a chance it could have still been scrapped if this era that it led into. When Henry left the division, what was stopping them from scrapping it then? Because it's like, well, this guy kind of made a name for himself, and now he's leaving the division. So now we have a bunch of guys who are no names.
Right.
And that's when Deiveson really rose to the occasion, and Moreno came from being cut to being just one of the most likable guys in the whole company. I mean, when they do autograph signings, Brandon Moreno is like the most popular guy out of every fighter on the roster. So I'm going to go with the effect, even though I recognize the calls played a big part in what led to it. But I think that these two series of fights, and really just what all the flyweights really elevating themselves to another level, has ultimately kept this division for hopefully long term.
Well, I was about to say, this is a supporting, kind of remark I'm about to make for Noah's point here, saying yes to this question. It is that these two are so good right now and really carrying this division that it's almost holding the rest of these flyweights to a higher standard. I mean, this division is in the best state over the past year and into now that it's been ever in terms of competitively. There's very, very many high-level guys and more that are coming into the company. Manel Kape, for example, came into the company. He's finally starting to put things together. There's just big things happening, moving, and we're just churning out contenders. Even though we're having a fourth fight between these two, there's contenders in waiting, and I think it's because of these two right here.
And I think it helps that even though both guys, especially Moreno, maybe feel like they could have like a really long title reign, but also every fight that I could see those two having after this saga's over, I don't think they're like a heavy favorite in a lot of these matchups. Like if they fought Askarov or Royval or Cara France, there's a lot of, when you have a guy like Izzy, right, who I know Izzy does a lot more pay-per-views and whatnot, but he just seems to be so much better than everyone in his weight class.
Yeah.
That there's a little bit of boredom almost, or like it gets a little dull, when there's no wonder if someone could even beat him almost. With Deiveson and Moreno, every title fight you feel like they have to go in there and earn it.
Yeah.
So that helps a little bit with the intrigue.
And the narrative for this weight class was always that they're smaller guys, they can't finish, they can't have fun fights, they're just moving around fast, right? You got to watch them move. But look when these fights are elevated. These guys have been main events and co-main events. They've lived up every time. Whether it was the finish by Brandon or the two ones that went the distance, they are great fights. Then look at the rest. Cara France, co-main event in Columbus with Askarov, incredible fight. Cara France versus Brandon Moreno just a few months ago, great fight. Royval, every fight that he's in is going to be great. He's about to fight Askar next week. When these guys fight now, especially when they're in these elevated, whether it's let me not forget, Matt Schnell versus Sue Mataraji. Yeah. Look at those two guys that really no one knew. Everybody knows them now, and they're flyweights, and it's because they're putting on fun fights. So, yes, all these guys are deserving of the higher placement on cards, including main events, to Noah's point that kind of started this.